Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Pleased to be joining you. Thanks for tuning in. Got another great show lined up for you this week. I know you'll think so after watching it and listening to it. Joe Mershman joined me here in just a moment, but Hawkeye insider David Eickholt will close out the show, mixed in the middle there with Kent McCausland, former Iowa Hawkeye sharpshooting great. And as you can see on the screen, I've located my buddy Joe Mershman. Joe, got to get to it this week. I want to hear all about your past, your travels to Indianapolis for the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament, but you're busy with the busiest time of year for you guys, busy on this show, so we'll catch up with you in a couple weeks. You doing okay?
Doing fine. It's the planters are coming out. The weather's cooperating. It's going to be an early spring, so it's go time.
Indeed it is for all of us. Thanks, Joe. Talk to you in a couple weeks.
Take care.
Back with more Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Joel from Tice Automotive Family. We're living through some of the most interesting and challenging times many of us have ever seen. Knowing who you can rely on is more important than ever. Many of us turn to our families to get us through, and the same holds true here. From our fair, upfront pricing to exceptional service after the sale, we truly want to exceed your expectations. So give us a call or stop by and let us show you what it means to be part of the Tice Automotive family.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. I'm pleased to be joined, as you can see on the screen, by my buddy Kent McCausland. You can see Kent's information on the bottom as well as mine. And we've had Kent on the show before, and we're going to do a season capper on the Hawkeyes, as tough as it was. And first and foremost, as always, Kent, thanks for joining us. And secondly, unfortunately, it was very foreboding what you said a couple of weeks ago when you had mentioned your group in 1999 being the last Hawkeye team to make it to the Sweet 16. Unfortunately, did not work for the Hawkeyes this year. Tough loss to Oregon, who is now just was playing lights out. And we record this on Monday afternoon and not our usual Tuesdays. So Oregon loses last night to USC. But I'll tell you what, Ken, it was a buzzsaw the Hawkeyes faced in Oregon.
Well, you know, the first thing I did was check the stats last night. Oregon playing Southern Cal. Southern Cal, very athletic, also played a zone, very active zone, but the percentages, 37% from the field for Oregon, 23 from three. Are you kidding me? You know, they come out and lay an egg, and I think you could tell, and not to make excuses, right? This is March Madness, stuff happens, right? But they don't have to play a first game. They really just have to prep for one team, and that's the Hawkeyes. And they came out and they were very energetic, you know, playing at noon or what have you. And they were all over the place. And I remember listening to the pregame, and they mentioned, you know, Dana Altman was thinking, I'm going to know within the first 3 to 5 minutes whether or not we're ready to go and if we're going to play well. And he based it on energy and knocking down shots. Were they going to be tight and not making shots and not have energy and play tentative? And obviously they came out, they had tons of energy and they were fresher. And when you compare it to some of the bodies that we had that were ailing with CJ Frederick, Connor McCaffrey, even Jordan Bohannon, all of them had either surgeries or were kind of ailing. I think it was very apparent who the fresher team was, and they didn't have to play that first game.
Yeah, you know, and Joe Wieskamp was nicked up a little bit. Of course, Luke has been beat up all year long. But the thing that really got my attention, and a lot of people are talking about this, I know a guy a few years after you, Greg Bruner, former Hawkeye great and still the all-time leading rebounder, I had Adam Haluska on the show last week, and we were talking about Greg's comments on social media, how the Pac-12 has seemed to push the ball up the floor, a lot of movement with screening and movement, where the Hawkeyes and the rest of the Big Ten, hey, it's no secret, you know, Michigan's the only team left out of 9 that were invited to the big dance. And Kent, you know, Greg had talked about how the Big Ten seems to dribble the air out of the ball. And I think a lot of that, you take a look at different styles, but as you mentioned what Dana Altman, coach at Oregon, said, hey, are we going to come out fresh and ready? You know, Ken, it's always that debate of rest over rust. You know, the Hawkeyes, if they'd have come out guns a-blazing, people would have said, well, the Hawks got to play a game on Saturday, so they were ready to roll on Monday. Conversely, Oregon had 10 days off because their opening round game against VCU canceled their game, and they moved into the next round against the Hawkeyes. So there's always that rest versus rust debate. But Kent, one thing I wanted to circle back, and we can hit the rest of the tournament here in just a minute, but before we move on about the Hawkeyes, I find it interesting that everybody's talked about, are we going to get this tournament in? How's it going to play out with COVID? Well, that's the only game, one game, that's been canceled so far this postseason of March Madness. We have 7 games left. Again, we're recording this on Monday afternoon. 2 tonight, 2 Tuesday, 2 Saturday, and 1 next Monday for the championship. It is interesting that there's only been 1 postponement or cancellation.
Yeah, I just say kudos to the kids and the staff. I mean, you got to be kidding me to get through this season literally testing for COVID every day on a daily basis. Not exactly fun if any of our viewers have ever had to have it done. And they're doing everything they can to be safe and to really be quarantined from their families and friends for several months, just to make sure that they can get a tournament in and get games in for us to watch on television. Any fans and any people that I've come into contact with that were pretty frustrated with the Hawkeyes losing to Oregon, I just remind them we're lucky that we got to watch this team, a top 10 Iowa basketball team, play an entire season. And what a bummer that we didn't get to go to Carver Hawkeye to watch them play. And can you imagine how loud it would have been? Like the BJ Roy and Eddie teams of old. You know, it'd have been loud and raucous and probably go undefeated at home if you can have that kind of energy. So thankful that the kids did it, the staff and everybody that had to be involved in that. I agree. Only one game so far. So far it's working, right? Whatever the NCAA has put into place in Indianapolis and surrounding areas has worked. Pretty cool that Hinkle and Mackey and Assembly Hall, all those venues involved. So just kind of cool.
Yeah, it really is, and we talk about the women's tournament going on as well, and the Hawkeye women had a nice representation and lost a tough game to UConn, #1 seed. But I'll tell you what, when you talk about that, the only people that were affected besides VCU not being able to play was the officials, and a lot made jokes about TV Teddy, the official, and how everybody, he went out to dinner with some other officials and 6 officials got sent home. But other than that, and the VCU game, there have been no occurrences, no test positives. Everything's gone smoothly. And as you mentioned, Kent, it is truly a testament to the players, the families, the coaches, the administrators. I'll even give the NCAA a little tip of the cap, which is unusual for me, but they deserve it in this case. So let's do this, Kent. Let's get back to the Hawkeye season as a whole, and you take a look at what's happening. Obviously, or I shouldn't say obviously, but pretty much a foregone conclusion, Luke is going to be gone, although this year didn't count for anybody as eligibility goes. Jordan Bohannon could come back, but won't. Wieskamp, a lot of people are up in the air. I'm not. I think he's gone. Do you think Joe Wieskamp comes back next year?
I have no insider information whatsoever, but if you look at what the NBA values right now, and you look at almost how you have to leave earlier than expected because the NBA loves to draft on potential, then he has an opportunity in front of him that he has to make a decision about. I can't tell you if he's gone or if he's staying. Obviously, as a fan of Iowa basketball, I'd love to see him stay. But when you're talking about a guy that can shoot it and shoot it from deep and shoot it in people's faces, can defend multiple positions and can get up and down the floor, is athletic, you're talking about a guy that the NBA looks at and is going to have an interest in. And so you still got to go through the process. You got to work out for teams. You got to go to an NBA team and then work out against 3 or 4 guys that are estimated to be in your same draft position. And then how do you play against those 3 people? So it's cutthroat. It's a business, and very interesting to see, kind of how the process plays out. But he's talented enough if he wants to try to make that leap and go play. And then you still got to go make a living. You still got to go play. You got to produce. Otherwise, you're going to be gone pretty quick, and then you can be looking for other opportunities elsewhere to play basketball.
That's true, and nor do I have any insider information on Wieskamp. It's just my feeling, and as you mentioned too, I think he's well suited for the pro game, the way he runs, jumps, and shoots, and handles it, and everything else you mentioned. So we'll see how that plays out. But what's coming back, we know for sure. Keegan Murray and Patrick McCaffrey and that fine young group. Then obviously people are talking about, are there going to be transfers in the guard court? Does Ulis come back? Does Toussaint come back? Are people upset? Perkins, does he come back? Are players and people upset because they didn't get the playing time they so needed or wanted? And you saw down the stretch, all 3 of those guards played extensively once injuries and foul trouble hit. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are about any of those 3 guards. Again, neither one of us have inside scoops on that. I'm just curious on your thought, being a former Hawkeye player, and you know what it's like with guys jockeying for playing time, especially the younger guys moving forward. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on those 3 specifically, in Perkins, Ulis, and Toussaint.
You bet. Well, I just think the world has changed, right? The transfer portal is full of names, right? So what opportunities are there for Iowa to bring people into the program? They got to fit. What opportunities are there for Hawkeyes that would maybe want to leave the program? I don't know what's in the minds of any of those kids or their families on making decisions. What I do see is that Perkins, I thought, got very good playing time throughout the year and got the opportunity to show what he could do. And I think he's a great athletic body that's only going to get better. So I think that's a great opportunity to stay. Ulis, I really liked how he played in the Oregon game. And why I say that is he was always looking for teammates, always looking to set up other guys, not someone in there looking for his own shot, which was what you would think a guard would do when they came into that situation. I want to show what I can do. He looked like he was running the offense. And so to me, someone who's believing in what's going on in the program, Toussaint, I've never heard a word out of Iowa City saying that he doesn't truly enjoy his experience in Iowa City. So I don't know why, there'd be a lot of rumors other than just people get nervous about losing good talent. You look at Keegan, you look at Patrick McCaffrey, two fantastic athletes that are going to take the next step. A lot of talent in Iowa City, and Coach McCaffrey always kind of plays to his talent. He figures out a way to win games with talent that he has around him. And I've never seen a team like Iowa this year that just kept feeding the post. And it's not like we did that before, but we had Luka Garza. So this is how we're going to play. And I thought that they did a very good job of adapting their game to what they had. And they'll do it again next year.
Yeah.
When they see what they have.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. And you take a look, the other question mark is going to be Jack Nunge, the health of Jack Nunge. How well can he come back? We've seen this before where he's had to come back from injury. And how many more times can we go to the well on that? And I just hope that he's able to be healthy in life, let alone play basketball again. So I think that big question mark with Jack Nunge in the middle as well. Everything looks and sounds good. Again, I don't have any inside information. David Eickholt, our Hawkeye insider, we've talked about this. It's so early in that injury process with Jack. He's coming along nicely, but you won't know until we get ready for next year, Ken.
Yeah, I mean, you feel horrible for he had a pretty rough year, right? And as you rehab and you try to get stronger, I thought he did a fantastic job of doing that, in preparation for this year. And then to have the injury hit him again, very difficult. And your body just breaks down. I mean, after a while, I think they're just going to have to really watch his minutes. And I think you're going to need some help there in the backcourt or in the front court and see who can step up and help. And so hopefully he can come back and play at a level that he feels good about and can get up and down without too much pain. But to your point, we're talking about the next 50, 60 years maybe of his life. Can he get in an airplane? Can he travel? Can he do things like that? And those are pretty important items as you grow old. So.
Yeah, we can all relate to that. And, as we wrap this up, Kent, I wanted to say to you, it's interesting that Fran McCaffrey has his extension through the next 7 or 8 seasons. Got a lot of fresh young talent coming back, as we talked about, with some experience. And then you take a look at the Hawkeyes can build off, hey, they didn't go to the Sweet 16. They lost going into the Sweet 16 against an extraordinarily hot Oregon team, as you mentioned. But they had a victory over Grand Canyon University in their first game. So there are a lot of positives building and moving forward. There's a lot of stability in this program as far as recruiting goes, or transfers in the transfer portal, as you mentioned. That's still up in the air. But it's been great going through this journey with you the 3 times you've been on this show, and I'm going to have you back one time through the summer leading into the season. I want to break this news tonight. A lot of you who know me know this, but we're going statewide with this show starting in May. So that'll be in the Des Moines market, Sioux City, Omaha, Council Bluffs, so throughout the whole state, and not just on Fox 28 KFXA in the eastern Iowa Cedar Rapids area. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the state, even though they see you, on your other show with your dad, Mac McCausland, and our buddy and mutual friend, Rob Brooks. And again, you can go to at Kent McCausland to find out the location of that program. But the state knows you well anyway from your great playing days as a Hawkeye, still the all-time leader in career three-point percentage and season three-point percentage. Kent McCausland, former Hawkeye sharpshooting great. So I'm looking forward to catching up with you this summer before we get into next season, Kent.
Sounds good. I look forward to it. And hopefully that 1999 Sweet 16 team, we break that at some point. I thought it'd be this year, but hopefully in the near future.
You know what they say, Ken, streaks are made to be broken. So you're exactly right. Hopefully you're right on that. My friend, thanks so much, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you. For Kent McCausland, this is Dave O'Hara, Hawkeyed with me. Back with more, and David Eickholt, the Hawkeye Insider, to close out the show in just a few moments.
When you're a farmer, there's a lot of things you can't control, but there is a way to give your soybeans an early advantage. Mershman Seeds soybean seed treatment featuring Turpidity ST. An independent analysis has proven faster and more even emergence every time. Just look at the Merschman difference. Give your crop the boost it needs for a uniform stand. For the best yields, grow with us. Merschman Seeds.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. As you can see on the screen, my Hawkeye insider, my buddy David Eickholt, joining us. You can see all of David's information and my information on the bottom of the screen. Long, heavy sigh, David, first and foremost, as always, thanks for joining us. But secondly, let's table Hawkeye men's basketball talk for a moment. We went through a lot of that with Kent McCausland in the previous segment. So let's start talking some wrestling like we did last week with Spencer Lee. Then we'll talk Iowa women's basketball, Bluter's Bunch, and then we'll talk some football. You had football press availability with Kirk Ferentz today, head coach. And again, viewers and listeners, I want you to know, normally we record on Tuesday afternoons. We're recording this on Monday afternoon this week. So we're leading into the Elite Eight and the men's basketball tournament and obviously into the women's as well. So David, thanks for joining us. And secondly, Spencer Lee, topic of conversation again this week. As Herculean as his effort was for his national championship last week with no ACLs, he is not going to be in the Olympic trials this year because of rehabbing and recouping from his injuries. Let's talk about him first and foremost, please.
The baddest man on the planet with no ACLs, 8 days fresh off an ACL tear, wins his third national title. You got to feel for the kid, though, Dave. You think about last year, he thought he was going to go to the Olympic trials. That was canceled due to COVID-19. And then you look at this season, everything he accomplished, won the Dan Hodge Award for the second consecutive year. Which goes the nation's most dominant wrestler, basically the equivalent of the Heisman. But look, I think for his long-term career, I mean, he's going to be a world champion for years and years to come. I think it's a smart decision not to go to the Olympic trials. I'm sure as he got heavy consultation with his parents, his coaches, and the medical staff. And I think it is the right decision, but you got to feel for the kid. For the second year in a row, he thought he was going to go have an Olympic dream, and that's just not going to be reality right now.
Yeah, we may have to wait until, if there even is an Olympics in 2024, or is it going to be in 2025? I mean, there are multiple things that could be happening here. So I agree with you. I'm glad the heat of the moment, he was ready to rock and roll, and who could blame him? He was so successful anyway without ACLs, winning a national title. But yeah, after talking with coaches, his parents, and looking at his future, yeah, he wants to come back for that fourth national title next year. Of course, we talked already last week about the other wrestlers coming back, so the Hawks are going to be looking good, hopefully defending that national title. And as you mentioned, all is right in the world order with the Hawkeye with the Hawkeye wrestling program being the national champions again. We're back at the top of the wrestling world, and the world seems right again, as you mentioned. But let's go into the Iowa women's basketball team. Bluter's Bunch, Caitlin Clark had a nice performance for a while on Saturday, but then unfortunately UConn is UConn. Paige Beckers and her teammates, and she had a band of other helpers big time in Saturday's game when the Hawkeye women lost to UConn 92-72. Great post-game chat between legendary head coach of the UConn Huskies women program, Gino Ariema, with Caitlin Clark after the game, post-game. So I'm going to step aside and let you fill in the blanks of all that going on with the Hawkeye women, please.
What a season, first of all, for Lisa Bluter and company. I mean, you think about a team that wasn't even supposed to sniff the NCAA tournament, the performance they did. Don't let the final score fool you, Dave. Iowa competed with UConn for the majority of that game. UConn ended the game on a 12-2 run, which kind of put it out to make that 20-point margin defeat. But Iowa was going toe-to-toe with them. They cut the lead down to 5 or 6 a few times, but there's a reason why UConn's UConn. They hit the big shots. They came back down. Iowa's defense ultimately, I think, kind of cost them like it had most of the season. They were last in scoring defense throughout the season, second most offensive production, third in field goal percentage for the year. But you can't ask anything more of Caitlin Clark. And I'll tell you this, they return all 5 stars next year. Every night, I believe 98.1% of scoring comes back next season. I mean, this is a team, Dave, that's not going to go anywhere. And I wrote a column about post-game. We could be entering the golden era of Lisa Bluter's tenure. I think this team's only going to get better and better. They have 2 top 100 recruits coming in next year, both in the post. I think Iowa's just got to get a little bit more size. They're out-rebounded. But again, UConn's UConn for a reason. But I'll say this. If Travis Scott, Kevin Durant, and all of these prominent figures are saying you can ball, you can ball. And I'll say this, Paige Beckers might be prematurely named the queen of the sport already. Caitlin Clark ain't that far behind. And I think she made a great performance out of it, and she captured the world's attention. And now the prestige and all the eyes are going to be on the Iowa women going forward.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Beckers, and much was made of her friendship with Caitlin Clark. And Becker's being from the Minneapolis area. She and Caitlin had a lot of experience together, not really against each other necessarily, but around AAU tournaments and being heavily recruited. And I think you're right. When all the prominent figures on social media, rappers like Travis Scott or musicians, and like Kevin Durant, Katie, the NBA legend, the other thing I'll tell you is, I thought the same thing when I'm watching that Iowa women's game against UConn, and all I kept thinking was, don't make it go to 20. Try to get it under double figures. And I wasn't going for moral victories, but once you knew the game was in hand the last 4 or 5 minutes, all I kept thinking was, yeah, you're right. That 20-point margin of end victory was not indicative of how close that game was and how closely it was played throughout the game. But I did like the post game when you saw Gino Auriemma, legendary UConn coach, kind of looking around like this with the crowd, and he found Caitlin Clark and waved her over to midcourt by the scores table after the game and had quite the conversation with him. And you reported on that. What was that conversation like between Gino Auriemma and Caitlin Clark?
Yeah, I know social media was kind of on fire, telling Gino, saying, jokingly that Gino was telling Caitlin to transfer, but Caitlin said post game that he just has a lot of respect for her. He's seeing great guards come through, and he said what she did and what Iowa did this season was special, and he's looking forward to watching Caitlin continue to grow and continue to blossom just into the role that she is. And I think this needs to be made a point too, Dave. Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers are helping grow the game of women's college basketball. I have not seen the numbers yet, but I'll tell you, the second they come out, it would not surprise me if that's the most watched game throughout the tournament and throughout the entire women's college basketball season. I mean, that's what they want. They want marquee stars, and it really doesn't get any bigger or better than Paige Beckers and Caitlin Clark in Iowa. And I'll say this, maybe they schedule a home and home for the next couple of years.
We've got a future here. We've only got 2 freshmen. Caitlin Clark, a freshman. Paige Becker's a freshman, so you're exactly right. We've got another 3 years plus because if this year counts, doesn't count, you know what I'm saying. I mean, we could have some fun in the future here and looking forward to that. So let's do this. Great again on Coach Bluder and Bluder's bunch and the team. As you mentioned, exciting times ahead, a lot coming back next year. Let's talk about Hawkeye football. You had a press availability with head coach Kirk Ferentz today. You'll be able to talk to some of the players next week, next Tuesday, so looking forward to that. What did you get from today's presser with Coach Ferentz?
Yeah, Dave, I think the biggest thing right now is that it does look like there's going to be a spring practice. I mean, you think of last year, they didn't get any spring practice. They said that's what really kind of held Spencer Petras back entering his first year as a starting quarterback. And now he gets his chance to really get a spring under his belt as a starter and really be able to perfect his craft, because spring is mostly used for individual skill building rather than team game planning, which is what fall camp and summer camp and all of that goes. But I'll say this, if fans are looking to go see Iowa, they are leaving the possibility of 2 dates being open to have some fans in Kinnick Stadium or wherever they want to host it to get a look at this football team. And they typically have not done that in the past. I think that'd be an excellent idea for the university to be able to kind of keep the fan base engaged. I would look at the May 1st date, and then there are some rumblings that maybe April 17th or around there. That will be the second. Again, this is not finalized by any means, but it's worth putting in your calendar and tabling it to the side. And also expect the news. I reported this about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but now it's been confirmed by Gary Barta, so I'll say it officially. They do plan on having fans in Kinnick Stadium this fall. Game days in Iowa City are going to go back the way God intended to, and I think it's going to be a very, very good thing, not just for the not just for the players, the coaches, but just the entire fan base and the local economy. It's going to be a great thing, I think, to see people just kind of having a little bit of excitement. Who knows? We'll see what the mask mandates are and stuff, but it might be nice to see people smile again after a hectic year and a half.
Amen to that. And David, we're going to be talking spring football as we go forward here, moving into the fall, summer and fall. Iowa baseball getting off to a great start. They're able to have some capacity or partial capacity to Duane Banks Field, and that's a fun venue. Hawks are going to be home, I believe it's 5 or 6 more times this spring for weekend series, so can't wait for that. Getting a chance to really start hitting some apex in the sports world. And as you mentioned, David, seeing people laugh and smile and enjoy themselves for the first time in a long while, being able to get back out into the masses. So before we close out with your wrap on Hawkeye basketball for this year, or your closer capper on the Hawkeye men's basketball, and we'll talk about it all year long, but in specifics this season and this group of players, anything else from football from Coach Ferentz today, or are we ready to move on to basketball?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing right now is it's an open competition across the board. He obviously talked about the new running back coach, Liddell Betts, new offensive line coach, George Barnett. He pointed to the recruiting aspect and the Midwest ties for Barnett and just said Betts is one of the best players he's ever seen at least in his career that he coached. And he kind of, playfully apologized to Liddell Betts for how bad Iowa's offensive line was in 1999 and 2000. Yeah. And he said Betts earned every single yard of it. And Kirk said, they think he cost him about 6 years of his playing career by how many hits he took in those 2 seasons. But, there'll be plenty more coverage at HawkeyeInsider.com. Once things really kick off, we'll be able to talk to players next week. And so right now it's just the excitement and the building up to what should be a fun and productive spring.
Most definitely. And as we close out, we're going to continue to talk Hawkeye basketball, as you mentioned, throughout as well, putting a capper on this last season and moving next season. And we spent a great deal of time talking with Kent McCausland, former Hawkeye basketball playing great, the segment before you here. So give me your quick takeaways here as the Elite Eight is getting ready to play out into the Final Four and championship game Monday, the day after Easter on April 5th. So we got Major League Baseball getting ready to start opening day this Thursday. The Masters will be the following weekend, the 8th through the 11th. So the golf world will be a buzz again. But give me some of your thoughts on the Hawkeyes now that it's been a week removed from the Hawkeyes losing to Oregon. Give me some of your thoughts, please.
I broke out this a little bit too early, Dave. This probably got to bring this back out for the Masters week.
That's right.
But I'll say this, with Iowa basketball, obviously it's a very disappointing ending. Luka Garza left everything on the court. You talk about a dynamic performance from him, 34 points. But I'll say this, Dave. Iowa hobbled the finish line. That's not an excuse, but Iowa was as beat up as any team in the country. Connor McCaffrey played with 2 torn labrums. Luka Garza was nowhere near healthy. Jordan Bohannon said he'd been struggling with a shoulder injury all season. Joe Wieskamp had a tweaked ankle. CJ Frederick had his lower leg injury, as they continue to classify it. Jack Nungy was out. The better question is, who's healthy? I don't think any player was healthy coming down the stretch. So hobbled the finish line, but that doesn't really get the sour taste out of each and every player's mouth and fans' mouth about what they expected out of this season. But, we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. I expect Fran to go hit the transfer portal hard and get ready for next season.
Yeah, can't wait to hear about it from you, the Hawkeye Insider. And yes, I'm definitely going to be wearing my Masters green jacket next week leading into the Masters. So yeah, bring that back. You're
pullover next week too. Might have to.
Yeah, no problem there. We won't hold that against you. David, thank you so much as always. Great coverage from you. Always joining us here on Hawkeye. Hawkeye Insider David Eickholt, all his information at the bottom of the screen along with mine. David, my friend, thank you so much. Look forward to catching up with you next week.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
My pleasure as always. For David Eickholt and Kent McCausland and Joe Mershman, and to you, the viewers, thanks for tuning in and making us number one, as always, on late night on KFXA Fox 28 in Eastern Iowa. As I mentioned with Kent McCausland, don't forget, next month, starting in May, we'll be going statewide. The show will be available on television throughout Des Moines, Sioux City, Council Bluffs, not just Eastern Iowa and Cedar Rapids. So looking forward to that as well. Thanks again for tuning in, and please stay tuned just for a second after the show here for the closing credits that list all of our advertisers and sponsors and friends of this show. Without them, we don't have a show, so please give them your business when you're able to. So again, for the aforementioned guests, I'm Dave O'Hara. That's Hawkeyed with me. That's all from me. Thanks to all of you.